Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon. I was going to say good morning. It's been rough. It's been rough.
Hello, and welcome to Genealogy Adventures. I'm Brian Sheffy.
And I'm Donya Williams. How are you guys doing? I'm excited today. Good show. Good show.
Good show. Hope you guys are doing well. So today, we're going to be talking about different aspects of genealogical standard of proof in terms of documenting specific information for your ancestors, and also talking about a lot of different kind of record sets to be able to prove when your ancestor was born, where your ancestor was born. I'm going to talk about some of my favorites. Donya, you're going to talk about a few of yours.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and for those of you, if you take a look at the comments, you will see that I posted a link for a downloadable PDF that's pretty much a summary of everything that we're going to be talking about in this hour. Plus, it's going to be a lot more that we just won't have time to talk about. But these really are kind of our go-to resources when it comes to documenting the lives of all of our ancestors. So whether they're European descended, African descended, there's a little bit in here about Native American ancestry. So trying to cover all the main bases. And it's all kind of it's all arranged chronologically. So hopefully you guys are starting to download it if you haven't already, and you can kind of follow along as we talk through them. So basically, the way that we kind of created this document is working kind of from your more recent ancestors to your more distant ancestors. So the first one is ancestors born from around 1930s onwards. So this group of people will more than likely be appearing in the 1940 census for the first time. So it's worth remembering that when it comes to vital records like birth certificates, death certificates, marriage records, we have 50 different states. And each one of them has different kind of they're not really statutes. They're what would you call them, Donia? Policies or
Policies. Yeah, I would call them policies.
yeah, about when they release this information, and it makes sense. We need to have our personal information secure, fraud, and all those wonderful reasons. So yeah. So for instance, trying to find if you're searching on Ancestry or Family Search for your parents' birth certificate and they're still alive, chances are you're not going to get it. Because those records are typically sealed anything from 75 years to, I think this it's about 100, isn't it, Danya?
Yeah, 75 to 100.
To about 100 years.
Yep.
So, and especially for people who are looking for information about their adoptive parents, don't despair, don't give up hope, because there are ways of actually kind of getting around that. So, if, for instance, if you are a direct descendant, and you're looking for birth and death and marriage records for your parents or your grandparents, and they're not publicly available or digitized online, if you know the county that they're actually born in, or that the marriage took place in, or that they died, you can actually contact those county council offices, explain who you are, how you related to them, and I think most states will let you buy them, but you do have to prove your connection to the people that you're inquiring about, because otherwise anyone could do it. I could just pay however much money it's going to be to get anybody's death certificate. So, as frustrating as it may be to genealogists, those rules and policies are there for a reason. So, some ways that you can actually get around this: things like religious documents. If your family has a faith, has a religion, has practiced the same religion over a couple of generations, you can find out where your parents' families were actually worshiping. Chances are that there may be religious documents for them. So things like baptism records, christening records. Depending on what your religion is, you may or may not have those. Different religions may not have those kind of documents, but if you're coming from a Judeo-Christian kind of faith background, the chances are pretty good that they do. Not all churches will keep them, so it might be worth asking around your family. Does anyone know where mom or dad or granny or grandpa's christening record is? Um, it will have that information about how old they are, and sometimes they will also have the date of birth or the year of birth. Um, Can you think of anything else that people? Oh, plus where the family was living, they'll have that
Right.
information too. Can you think of anything else that you can kind of glean from that kind of a record?
No.
I mean,
I think you covered it.
I,
I'm
well,
trying to get this to Afiba too, so he can put some stuff up if possible.
well, I know that, for instance, my baptism record had my full name because I very rarely ever reveal my middle name, but that's got my full name, it's got my date of birth, it's got the date of my baptism, the church where I was baptized, home address, even the old telephone number. It just has that level of detail, so it's just a cool thing to access. Um,
Oh,
same.
study directories too.
Mhm. There are other, there are parish records that you can check into. Um, Even look at if your parents have my parents kept everything. I don't know why they kept so much stuff. They even kept my school enrollment. So again, that
Oh wow.
happened.
Oh wow.
I even have old report cards which are hilarious. Um, but yeah, those school enrollment forms actually had, again, full name, date of birth, where I was born, the address that we were living in. So those are also really good to have. Um, One gold mine that often gets overlooked, and this is equally true for people of color as it is for people of European backgrounds: birth announcements in newspapers.
Yes.
Priceless. Matter of fact, I've reacquainted myself with those, and I'm actually using them a lot more because I'm trying to put as many of my DNA matches on Ancestry onto my tree. And those birth announcements so far are everything. They are. They're everything. They are brilliant. So you have services like newspapers.com. That's part of Ancestry. You can do it one of two ways. You can either take out a separate membership with newspapers.com, or there's like a package on Ancestry where you get access to Ancestry, Fold 3, newspapers.com. I think there's something else in there, but I'm not sure.
No, it's just those three. What it is Ancestry will allow World with that. So if you're not doing World and you want to do World and newspapers and Fold 3, then you can get all three for, I think it's $44.99.
That's right.
And yeah, you get all three. But the thing about newspapers.com is that even when you do that, if there are sometimes on newspaper.com they have those special ones like Ashland newspapers, you can't access that. You have to pay an additional amount of like $11.
Like I
So
like I can look up for you in Aiken because
right.
I had the
Yeah,
special.
you have to have that special. So total you could end up spending still under $60, including the specials. And I really, it's worth it. You're gonna spend about $55 a month for all of that stuff, and it's actually it's worth it. It really is worth it. I know it may not seem like I'm not a big genealogy bank fan. I think it's kind of hard to search, and I have it, but I'm about to cancel it. I just keep forgetting to do it, so I'm gonna cancel it. Matter of fact, after we get off the show, just so I can remind myself. But
That's kind of how I feel about Chronicling America. It's not that it's a bad service, and again, it's got a lot of. And Chronicling America is free. You don't pay for that. They
right,
don't. They don't have every newspaper, but they do have a lot of them on there.
they do.
But I do find it's a bit of a struggle sometimes. If I'm
Yeah,
looking, yeah, it is.
yeah. It's can be bad.
And another set of newspapers is also worth looking and checking in your state archives because the Library of Virginia, the LVA website, has an awesome, awesome, awesome newspaper repository. So the ones in Virginia, you cannot get them anywhere else. You can't get them on newspapers.com. They're not on Chronicling America. They are only on the Library of Virginia website, which is free. And again, just amazing. And it's also just a really good thing just to Google your family's surname and whatever Virginia county they were living in. And the chances are there is a newspaper story. I'm still cracking up because In the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, they actually have a section of the page called Colored News. And you get all, they're like the society pages. And
Wow.
tell me about it. So I'm learning about where some of my Sheffy family went to, where some of my Roan family went to, because they'll say, oh, little Annabella Sheffy is coming back from college at Pittsburgh to spend the week with her family. And let's all wish her well if we see her. But yeah, that's how it's phrased in the Virginia papers in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. It's called colored news. And they have all the comings and goings and business news of all the colored folks back
That's
then.
crazy.
So yeah, if you're into genealogy, you just kind of have to suck that stuff up and just kind of laugh and do. I look at it this way: at least they did it.
At
The
least it's out there. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess we take what we can get.
take what we can get and we run with it. And as well, they were making things, within that section of the paper. They were talking about Black engagements, Black couples' weddings, who was at the weddings, just all of that kind of information. It really is. It really is awesome. North Carolina also has the same thing. I don't remember which, because North Carolina has so many repositories and databases. I can't remember, but there is a link in the document that you've downloaded towards the back that has a link to North Carolina resources. It's somewhere in one of those in that list of resources. So birth announcements are really great. Marriage announcements are also really great because, again, that gives you specific dates and places. Funeral programs. I have only just discovered that Virginia, there was a big project that was done by some Virginia genealogists who actually have gotten hold of thousands of African American funeral programs. I mean, this is really helping me again in my research for people who died in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Some of them didn't have death certificates. So even though I can't get the death certificates, the fact is, I've got something even better. I've got their funeral program. It tells me who their kids were, who their parents were, who their siblings,
Wow.
all of that information. Uh,
Yeah, I found those to be very helpful. I think when I really started getting into those is when I was working on that Peterson stuff for the Higgins,
mhm.
and I went over to our cousin Cynthia's house, and she had boxes and boxes and boxes. And I'm looking through these things, and boy, you start seeing stuff and you're like, yeah, this name goes to, yeah, we, so that's when I started getting into it because of Cynthia had all that stuff, and it was awesome. So those are definitely things that I actually, I love obituaries. My mom has a lot, and I never realized, what you could do. So it's funny, you'll save an obituary before you save a picture, you know. And, you need both.
And again, it really, as Donnie meant, and I'm going to say this first, is my Aunt Jay and my Aunt Cook both have boxes full of family, funeral programs for family and close family friends. So again, it's worth asking around your family, especially with aunties and uncles of a certain age. Does anyone know anything about family funeral programs? Does anyone have them? Has anyone seen them? And then reach out and try and get in touch with those family members. Um,
Right.
but they are a gold mine of information. Plus, oh, that's true. Plus, the funeral programs normally have the person's picture.
Yes.
I'm seeing pictures of people that I've never seen before.
Yep.
No tree. I know loads about them, but I have no idea what they look like, and I actually finally have pictures, so that's really good. Military service records, especially for the men, like World War II draft cards, Fold 3, another part of the Ancestry.com empire. Fold 3, you can get Vietnam service records, Korea service records. Can't get pensions. Those aren't releasable yet. But every once in a while, I'll pick up a name of a child, a dependent, a wife, something in those records. The thing about the World War II draft cards, depending on the information that the person provided, because sometimes they were transparent and sometimes they weren't, you get the date of birth, which is a year off, usually, for some reason. They were made, I can't remember, they either made the men a year older or they made the men a year younger. It's,
Yeah, I've seen that for military records and for social security apps.
yeah, I don't understand why that happened.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I'm just, I don't get it. It's nothing else that I can say is I don't get it either.
So again, if you were applying to a linear society, I mean, so long, I guess, if the majority of the birth years with the month and the day are the same, I would probably go with that.
Yeah,
But if you were relying on a military record, would it be allowable for the DAR to just make a note going, well, it's a military record, this is usually a year off? I don't know.
I can't even answer that. Because I have no idea.
Mhm. Sometimes on the military service records, you will get the name of a spouse, or you
Yes.
will get the name of the parent. But the person who was living with the draftee will sometimes be on that card too. And it's also great, especially for African Americans who had just left the South. This is probably one of the first official records that they actually filled in. So you can actually figure out where they moved to. Like we
The
know a lot
draft cards.
of draft cards.
Yeah,
That's how I found a lot of my Mathises and my
me
Matthews who
too.
were coming out of
Yep.
and figuring out, oh, okay, well, this whole cluster has just moved to Baltimore or Philly or Boston. What are the chances that other family members were moving to the same places? And they did. So siblings, cousins, extended family members, you start seeing them nearby. And World War II draft cards are absolutely available on Ancestry. I'm not sure if they're available on Family Search. I don't
I've
remember.
never seen them there.
I don't remember seeing them on Family Search.
Yeah, I've never seen them on there. I've never seen them there. That's weird because Family Search normally has a lot of the stuff that most of the same things that Ancestry has, but then they have stuff that Ancestry doesn't have. Like Ancestry doesn't have a lot of the freedmen stuff.
No,
They
they
don't
don't.
have the labor contracts. They don't have their statements like that. They have a little, but not like not like Family Search. Family Search has all of that. And then that new census record that Loretta found, that's also there. It's not on that.
Okay.
And then there are certain marriage records that that Family Search has that Ancestry doesn't have yet. Because remember, that's how we found the stuff for
Yeah,
in
they
life.
really with Family Search when it comes to the Freedmen records, I think they basically only have the bank records. I haven't seen the marriage records on there.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, they have the bank records and they have the labor contracts.
And the labor con.
Because that's where we just hit the gold mine when we
Absolutely.
hit those labor contracts. But yeah, they have that. But as far as yeah, I don't think they have Freedmen have the marriage record.
Okay. Again, newspapers, engagements, and wedding announcements, more so the wedding announcements, you again pick up the names of family members. So it's like the bride was born, in Greenwood County. She is the daughter of Mr. X and Mrs. Y. Sometimes they'll give you the mother's maiden name as well as her married name. Um, Chances are they're going to be family members. They're going to be family members who are bridesmaids and groomsmen and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So again, can pick up a lot of useful information from engagements and wedding announcements and newspapers. Uh, what else was there? Oh, Social Security application forms. You love speaking about this. You too. They have saved our bacon so many times.
They have. I love them. Those I think those might be some of my favorite records for this time period because they give everything. They give the parents' names, and not only do they give the parents' name, they give the mother's maiden name. That is just like God to me. you know, they giving that mother's maiden name is just the best thing since sliced bread. And so yeah, I love. And then another thing that they do is at the very bottom, you see how many different names that person went by.
Which are the multiple marriages.
Right. So you'll find, oh my God, yes, I love the Social Security application forms.
Which is another reason why you should never just click and save a document without actually opening it up and reading it. Because
Right.
I've lost track of the number of women that we realized had had a previous marriage. So if we thought Brown was a woman's maiden name, we would get the Social Security app, and because remember there were a couple of times we were like, why can't we find this woman in 1880, 1900, 1870? Well, that's because her surname on the marriage certificate was actually her first married name.
Yep.
And you said you open up the Social Security app, and it's like, oh, her maiden name wasn't Brown. It was actually it was actually Woodson. Okay, wasn't expecting that. So again, really good to be able to pick up those kind of clues. Property and land records. Those are public accessible records, and as far as I'm aware, there's no hold period on that. So those records are held in the county council offices. You just need to familiarize yourself with where that is in the county that you're researching. The other thing that I love is our city directories. Now, city directories are more applicable before I guess, the, the invention of mobile phones. I don't think anyone really does city directories anymore, do they?
I don't think they do either. Those are telephone books. And I mean, yes, they do actually. Telephone books are done. They still do telephone books. They're not as thick as they were. They
Hmm.
don't have the same information, but they still do them. Because I remember living where I lived, the books would be dropped off.
Okay.
So yellow pages and white pages do still exist, but the city directories, yeah, that's another one that's a really good one because they'll show a woman and the kids, and if the woman is a widow, they put wed, in parentheses right on the side. And then given the occupation, you start to learn about the occupation. I like the U.S. city directories because they let me know where my grandparents were at all times.
Yes.
So even if they weren't living in DC, but I still picked this up. Now they was living in Richmond, and it confirmed stories that I was told, and I now know. Like right now, I have my grandfather up to 19 up to his death because of U.S. directories, and it's same for my grandmother. The only thing that I'm missing for both of them is that 1950 census. I need that, and that will end for her afterwards because she was sick. So depending, and it all depends on when this was taken, because sometimes they're taken in April, sometimes they're taken in June. If they're taken in June, then she won't show up. So I don't know when the 1951 was.
And the other thing that the city directories helped me do was actually help someone figure out who her biological great grandfather was.
Yep.
I'd always thought that this particular Sheffy line had always been in Virginia and had always stayed in Virginia. But come to find out that her great grandfather spent a little spell in Ohio, just long enough to father a daughter before he went back to Virginia. And finding his name in the city directory, that was everything. Because the other thing is they gave the occupation, because he had a fairly common name, but he was a black electrician, which was really rare for that time period. And the fact that he was listed as an electrician, and it even had a little C for colored next to his name, so there was like no doubt. So what actually once she actually had that information, put it all in her tree, did all the DNA stuff, boom, there it was. It was all the proof. That was like the last final piece of the puzzle. So those can be excellent because believe it or not, ancestors can pop up in places that you just really didn't expect them to. Because we had a Peterson who did that.
Yep.
we had a Peterson, and that's how we figured it out, was the city
But
director.
that's how we were figuring out a lot of stuff. We had a lot more than just Peterson's doing it. We had several family members just all of a sudden. I mean, that's the MO of Yelldales. They just pop up. That's the MO. That's the MO of them. And who else was the Quarrels did that? But again, that's Yelldales again. So it's just yeah, yeah.
Other documents in this time period that could be helpful: court cases, and specifically divorce papers. Um, those will have a lot of information within them, and again, those are usually held at the county court level. Immigration and naturalization documentation. Again, a lot of that's going to be available. The Basically the first and only census that covers these people is the 1940 census, because the 1950 census doesn't come out until 2022. Is that
Right.
right? 2022.
April 2022.
That's it. So for the time being, in terms of U.S. federal censuses, 1940 is as far as we can go. I'm not sure what the case is with U.S. state censuses. I have a feeling that's going to vary from state to state.
Mm-hmm.
But I would imagine that that line of censuses will run out around 1942, because again, you're coming up against that 75 to 100-year rule. And last but not least, again, worth remembering for a lot of African Americans, a lot of our ancestors got out of the South by working for the railways. So railroad records and railroad retirement records. And if you Google those phrases, you'll find the 3 or 4 places where those kinds of records are actually stored. And especially the retirement ones, because that will include, usually they include they will reference other family members. So that kind of covers the most recent generations of your family. Looking at people that were born roughly between the 1870 and 1930 US federal census. Again, we have religious documents. I won't rehash that. You have parish records. Oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was saying pretty much the same in this one as the other. Only reason why I'm saying it like that, because we went through that. It took us 30 minutes, and I want us to get to that other stuff, the one that you really had.
Yeah, well, other than that, you're going to have more censuses to be able to take a look at.
Mm-hmm.
Also, insurance policies. This
Yes, that's a good one.
when I start seeing insurance policies. And if you have Black ancestors, do not assume that they did not take out insurance policies, because I have found more insurance policies than even I thought I would ever be able to find. So that, again, that's really cool. So you've got that sheet, like Donia said, that's pretty similar to the first one. You want to get to ancestors born prior to the 1870 federal
That's the
census.
one, because I love this. Well, you kind of we kind of lengthened the enslaved. I like my favorite column in here. When you guys print it out, is the middle column, and it's my favorite because I'm so tired of hearing people say that they cannot find their enslaved ancestors. And this is a whole listing of where you need to look in order for you to find them. It's not impossible. I mean, yeah, it's hard, and we have to work harder. But hell, we've been working harder. Sorry, but we've been working harder since the beginning of the time. So it's in our blood to be able to do that. It's in our DNA to be able to do that. And the bottom line is, this is just an awesome list. This list is my favorite. So yeah, I like it.
One first one, probate records.
So okay, enslavers, the best way. So for those who are not looking at it, if you haven't printed it out, I did repost it. And if you haven't opened it up, when you open up the link, click on the link. It's a actual tab on the internet, PDF. So you would be able to see it and the show at the same time. But if you haven't done it, it's 3 columns. One is for European descended ancestors. One is for enslaved African descended ancestors. The other is for free people of color. And these are ways that you can, find these particular people. Now, the European and the free people of color are very similar. Um, they have your lineage books, they have the parish, they're all of the things that we kind of put up there, because even though free people of color, they were free, but they were free with God,
limitations.
that word, huh?
They were free with limitations.
We're free with limitations. So they had somebody that had to be there so this could happen. So they're in the lineage book because their person who was watching over them is in the lineage book, but they're still there. Whereas our enslaved ancestors, they didn't have that. So we have to go by, instead of it being in a lineage book, it's a probate record. Like this is so good how you wrote this because it's not a lineage book, but it's a probate record where you have the will, the inventory, the administrative letters, anything like that. If their name is listed in it, it makes a difference for you. Those are the things that you're looking for. So you have those. You have the journals. He wrote enslavers' day books, farm books. Whitfield Brooks's thing, it was called a journal. It was his journal. That's how he did it. Thomas Jefferson was the farm book. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So their names are listed and what it is that they're doing and how they're doing it and when they're doing it. But you can find your people. Of course, you got the slave sales deeds. There
The,
are parish records that do it, huh?
the thing about the farm books or the day books is they tend to give information about the date of birth and death for all the enslaved people. Usually the mother is named for the births. Sometimes the father is, but that's very rare. But you at least get the name of the mother.
Yeah. And see, and you don't get that with the journal.
No.
Well, not in Whitfield's journal. You didn't get. But he would give you the weather quicker than he drop a name or something to that nature. But there was an area where he did, was writing up the names. The thing about Whitfield Brooks's journal is that the white families that he was connected to gave me let me know the family that I needed to research next, because I knew that that family was somehow already connected to me anyway. So you always have to like open your eyes to different things, and genealogy is a think out the box type of thing. And that's what you have to do. You have to we have to just take what we can get and squeeze out of it what we can get out of it.
What I'm going to say is this will make more sense to experienced researchers. Newbies probably won't. It'll take a little while to kind of clock it. When you're reading through an enslaver's will, always pay close attention to these people didn't bandy words about lightly. They were subtly conveying information. If anything strikes you as unusual about the bequest of an enslaved person to a specific family member, make a note of that. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Our four times great grandfather, Moses Williams the Elder, when his enslaver father died, his father was very specific about who he was going to go to, which was his uncle. When his uncle died, his uncle was even more specific about what was going to happen to his enslaved nephew Moses. And I know that sounds like this insane sentence that you will ever hear in an enslaved nephew, but that's what Moses was to James Henderson Williams.
Yeah.
With the caveat that if Moses didn't get on with or was not well treated by his cousin, which was Davis Williams, Moses was free to choose who he would go with.
Yep.
He did. And what blew my mind, and I think it blew your mind when I told you this, when we finally figured out, well, it clearly didn't work out with Davis, because the next thing we know, Moses is all the way down in Barnwell.
Yep.
His first wife, Miss Haygood, and we couldn't work out why. Oh, okay. Well, things must have gone south with Davis, and to be fair, there was nothing in James Henderson Williams' will that said that Moses had to choose someone from within the family.
Yep.
said that Moses could choose for himself who he went to. So he went to his first wife's owners. And
Yeah. And the thing is that they didn't do that with just Moses. They also did that with two elder women. They did that from the jump. When I leave, she can go, they can go wherever they want to go. And we feel that one of those women might be Moses's mother. Um, but it's just amazing how sometimes those type of things happen. But you have to follow. It's a breadcrumb. It may be a small one, but it's a breadcrumb, and you just gotta go and pick at it and pick at it until you get it. Or think of it as a diamond in the rough. It's a piece of coal, and you got to just squeeze that coal and squeeze it and squeeze it until you come out with this beautiful, beautiful diamond and all of this beautiful information. So I really, really, yeah, those
so
books are
always pay
awesome.
attention to the language, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to see, I bequeath my girl Sally to this person. Bob goes to that person.
Right.
Peter, this person. It's like I said, when you see something really specific, that should set some bells ringing. Another example is my ancestor George Henry Roan. He was left an annuity, an annual annuity, and it was a lot of money, an annuity every year. And my assumption is that this is the one who's the grandson of Patrick Henry. And my assumption is that the Roan family, before they left to Tennessee and placed him with the Warren family, wanted him to be free, but rather than just free him, he would get an annuity. And it was enough that he could, one year he could have bought himself out of slavery, the next year he could have bought his wife, and the following years he could have bought his kids. That's
Wow.
that's how much money he was left. But unfortunately, the Civil War happens. The family lost all the money, so he didn't get anything. But I had never seen that before in a will, where an enslaver left an enslaved person an annual annuity, much less the amount of money that George was supposed to get. So
That's
that was,
probably what Whitfield was doing in the memo,
you know what, that probably is.
because they had annual gifts. That's what he said in his thing. It was annual gifts in his will that would be left up to his wife to take care of. I don't
Yeah.
think she ever took care of it. I don't think she did what she was supposed to do. I would love to find that memo.
Mm.
That's a goal of mine. But another thing is that I've is dowries, that you need to pay attention to dowries, because I don't think that for those that saw the VH1 years ago with 50 Cent when he did his DNA and tracking his family tree and so on and so forth. 50 Cent's four-time great grandmother was also owned by the Brooks family, and but when you're watching the VH1 talks about those enslaved people that was in his family being with the Donovans. So this is one of the things that I can't stand about the shows that talk about your genealogy, because they don't give you everything, because that lets you know that they didn't look into every single thing. So when they told him about his four-time great grandmother and her children and how they were enslaved by the Donovans, I was looking at it and I'm like, no, they weren't. And the reason I could say that is because the woman that RGM Donovan married was the daughter to Whitfield Brooks. They were a dowry. They were a part of his gift to his daughter. And that's how they ended up with the Donovans. So pay attention to who's enslaved and where those enslavers come from, enslaved people come from. Because if you thinking that, okay, my family's last name, my family's surname should be Donovan because they were enslaved by them, or you have people saying, oh, most African Americans didn't take on their enslavers' names, I just don't have proof of that, because I see them taking on the enslaver name, but it could be all possible that the last enslaver that they were with, they're there because they were a part of a dowry, not because that was the area that they had to be, or or what have you. Yeah, you had some that went from one place and then changed their name to the next one they went to it, like Shepherd Harrison did. But overall, that's not what it is. That's why that's why what's her face, Mary Yeldale fought for her slaves for George and them, so she could take them with her to the Fuller line. But that's what it was. So yeah,
It's,
that's
it's like Sally Heming. Sally Heming was a dowry slave who was the half sister of Thomas Jefferson's wife. So,
wow.
but she was a dower slave. That's how she entered the Jefferson household. Parish records, parish and county records again. Not, I think it was more common in the early colonial period and started to die out towards the latter part, in the early part of the Republic. But some enslavers, particularly in places like Maryland, Virginia, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, were actually registering the births, marriages, and deaths of their enslaved people.
Mm,
That sadly, it is a habit that started to dwindle and die out over time. But in that early period, they did do it. So it is worth checking parish records just for that. Freedmen Bureau records, there are too many to cover. We could just do a whole show on the on the Freedmen records, but you have bank records, which have a gold mine. Well, not always, but usually they have a gold mine of information. They'll tell you the names of their parents, whether their parents are alive or dead, where they believe their parents were living, names of siblings, names of children. They know that their sister got married. The sister's there with her married name, so you can pick up the trail for her. So those records are just a gold mine. You have labor contracts, which were the first contracts between emancipated former slaves, and sometimes they're former enslavers, sometimes just someone else who happened to live in the neighborhood. That can sometimes be a bit 50-50. But you can pick up additional family members from those documents. I can't tell you the number of extra kids that you and I have found just by
right.
just by finding someone's Freedman labor contract. So those are awesome. There are marriage records in the Freedmen Bureau records that'll tell you what the married couple looked like. It's racist as hell. I'm just going to say it, but it gives you the complexion, the physical description of the couple getting married, if they've been married before, if they had children from previous relationships or marriages. They're awesome. I can't recommend that. But again, the Freedmen Bureau was giving aid to people, whether that was food, blankets, medicine. They were setting up schools. There's just a whole load of information in that record set. My advice: go to Family Search first. Look for the Freedmen records on Family Search, because as Donnie has said, there's just more of them there than there is on Ancestry.
Yes.
Um,
Especially labor contracts. When I tell you, me and when Brian and we came across that one for Burrell, oh my God, we thought we found the holy grail.
we
Like,
did.
we thought we found the holy grail, because y'all need to understand. Y'all know, you guys, these are our regular folks that are up here, and y'all know how much the Yodels just gives me the biggest headache in the world. So to find that particular document that was listing him, his children, his grandchildren, I mean, that labor contract was fire. It was everything. It made so much sense. I ended up connecting what, 5 families?
I think, yeah, because we easily pulled 4 or 5 more kids.
Yes,
Easily.
and I have all these Yeldales on my Facebook page, and I ended up connecting all of them together because one was coming from each one of these men's
Yep.
children. And now that I knew who the children were, it just made things even more exciting. And man, when I tell you that stuff, that I'm telling you, it was the holy grail.
Mhm. County and state newspapers again, but for different reasons. They will have ads for runaways. They will have ads for enslaved people who did heroic things. I found a story about an enslaved ancestor who saved the son of one of his enslavers from drowning. So he got a mention. Um, Sadly, you will see advertisements for the sale of enslaved people. You get information about estate sales, sales of enslaved people for whatever reason. So don't dismiss newspapers again, the old ones, for looking for that information. Enslavers' insurance policies. Enslaved people were property. What did you do with expensive property? You insured it. So if you whatever your favorite internet browser is, whether it's Bing, Google, Safari, Opera, whatever it is, Opera, not Oprah, Opera. On the brain today for some reason. Um, just Google enslavers insurance policies. Believe it or not, that's one of the ways that Wall Street became as financially powerful and as wealthy as it did was slave insurance policies. Enslavers mortgage policies. That was something else they did. They more because enslaved people were expensive, especially your prime enslaved people. Uh, if the enslaver wanted to buy the 50 acres that just became available for sale in the field next, in the property next to his, and he or she didn't have the ready cash, they would mortgage an enslaved person to get the money to be able to do that. And again, if you Google the phrase enslavers mortgage policies, you'll find the archives that have those in them. There's hiring out work contracts. That's usually going to be in an enslaver's archives. Like I've read some for Thomas Jefferson where he hired out his enslaved people. I've read some for George Washington Parke Custis, Martha Washington's grandson, where he hired people out. So again, you get the names, and a lot of times they hired out whole families. So you get the man, his wife, and kids all listed in the same document with ages from which you can work out their approximate year of birth.
The Middletons did that a lot
Yes.
because that's how George and Rebecca probably met. Because he there were records in his inventory. He had a whole financial record within the inventory, and it showed how many times he was renting out to Edward Settles.
Right.
And Edward Settles was the guardian, that's the word I was looking for, guardian for Rebecca Bug, who was a free person of color. And there were several times where he got just George, several times. So yeah, that the Middletons was another group that did that.
You have mortality schedules. There's one for 1850. There's one for 1862, isn't there? Yeah, just those two. Just those two. I don't think they were available in
I
1840.
haven't seen anymore.
I'm gonna say we don't really know how to phrase this, but we're gonna say the first state census after emancipation and before the 1870 federal census. I don't know if every state did this, but I've seen them for some counties in Virginia, some counties in North Carolina, and we found them for Edgefield wasn't the only one.
It was Edgefield and I think Aiken.
And that was like 1868, 1869.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in the household, what they do is they list the head of household and then they group children by gender and by age and will give you the number. But not there was something about the boys that was off. Remember, there seemed to be more columns for the girls than the boys, or that might have been the other.
Actually, it was more columns for the boys than the girls.
The other way
And
around.
yeah, and then that particular census, that man,
Because again, we figured out someone had more kids, that they had two more daughters than what we had.
yeah,
But we weren't named, so we don't know
have
who they.
no idea who they are.
We just know we have to find two more of them.
Yep. But
Uh,
I mean, it was expected. That was for Martha. That was, she was a breeder, so there's more kids.
there's the 1870 U.S. federal census, because again, as we've said numerous times on this show, you want to open that up. You want to see where your ancestor was living. First of all, do they own their own lands? You'll know because there'll be a dollar figure next to amount of real estate owned. Um, If they didn't, the chances are they were sharecropping, or they were working for their former enslaver or someone who lived near their former enslaver. You find the first you see if they're living on a family who was European descended, and then you try to work out what the relationship between those two were. So that could be freedmen labor contracts, and then you may have to research that enslaving family to see if your ancestor's name is coming up in their probate documents and other type documents. One that I kind of blew Danya away with this morning was maritime records. There were a lot of enslaved men who were enslaved as sailors, or they worked on the canals, they worked on waterways. Um, some of them had to be bonded. Fingers crossed there'll be paperwork for them. I've certainly found them. Shipping manifest listed under crews, full name. So again, this whole notion that enslaved people didn't have last names, well, not according to these maritime records, because they're all there with their surnames and their ages, which again, you compare their age to the date the document was written, you can work out their rough year of birth. And then Donnie reminded me about Civil War pension records. Um, because even though we've done the show with Kevin Levine and talked about how body servants and the men who dug the trenches were not Confederate soldiers. The fact is they were there in the Civil War for the Confederacy, and they applied for their pensions. And again, it's a great way to kind of confirm their vital statistics in terms of dates and surviving family members. And again, the reason why we're kind of doing this today is the whole genealogical standard of proof is about proving every single aspect that you're claiming for an ancestor. So that's when they were born, when they married, when they died, how many kids did they have, where do they live, all of those all of those kind of key data points. And as genealogists, we just have to sit down and think about what records can I possibly access to be able to prove each one of those vital things, which is why.
Exactly. Exactly. These steps that Brian wrote up, um, is really for those who are looking to. This is a good way for you to look at things to figure out your genealogy. Yeah, if you're trying to join a lineage group and figure out which way you want to go as far as how you want to prove somebody, and because that's what you have to do with lineage groups. You have to prove your connection to them. So now you have the information to really go and utilize to figure out how can I prove so and so, how I am, related to so and so. We have lately been pushing the sons and daughters of the middle U.S. Passage. We've been pushing that, and we're pushing it because it's the first Black lineage group that's set up very similar to the Daughters of the American Revolution. We need to grow that. We need to make that be just as popular as the DAR. So the way to make that just as popular as the DAR is to show you guys how to fill it out and figure out how, what it is that you need in order for you to get it. Let's take this momentum that's going on with this all Black everything, like we brand new people, and you never had these problems before, but now we're everything now. So let's run with that. Let's do what we need to do and really just kind of push that kind of stuff out there and start joining these lineage groups that are not just for African Americans. Join the DAR. Join the what's another one? The Sons for Men. Only way we can make these things change and be better is if we're sitting at the table with them, y'all. We have to be right there, and we got to get to that point. So in order to get to that point, take this document, learn how to do it.
And as Donia said, the kind of documents and resources for European descended Americans and free people of color, pretty much identical. The only difference is with free people of color, you will either have some manumission paperwork.
Yeah.
It's the legal process by which an enslaved person was set free. That's a court document that will be held in a court archive. And another thing that'll be held that was a court document was freedom papers. Not every colony, not every state required them. Virginia did. North Carolina, sometimes, but mainly Virginia. You had to go to court, prove that you were free. You would have a white person basically vouch that you were free. If the white person and the free person of color had the same surname and were living in the same town and county, chances are they were related to each other, and that is something that you should look into. But they will also say why they were free. They were free because their mother was free. Remember,
Right.
everything's on the status of their mother. So you can get their mother's name, you get where they were born, when they were born, you get a little physical description of them, which is as close as I'm going to get to a portrait for most of my free colonial free people of color. But those are basically the two main differences. They're both both parties are going to have bastardy bonds, court records, property records, parish records. They're all there. So, like I said, we thought it was really kind of neat to lay them outside, the three side by side, so you can get a sense of how similar some of them are and how different one in particular kind of is.
So, Brian, FIBA has uploaded the document, and he's on the Native American research resources and all of that, because we're 4 minutes out.
All right. Well, that I love synchronicity because we're at the end more or less.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, what you guys are seeing right now, that what you're looking at, what you're getting ready to look at, the ancestors born prior to 1870. That's about to pop up. That was the last thing that we were doing. There it is, right there. And that's the last one. I find this part of this particular link to be the most accurate. Not just the most accurate, but the best part of this write up. So you guys definitely print it out, put it a part of your research and strategies, and start joining these lineage groups, start joining these local groups, so you can teach and show and share, because that's the only way we're going to be able to move past this
Yeah.
world that we're living in right now. It really is.
And the last couple of pages kind of list some of our kind of really popular, our standard go-to in terms of our own practical research. Uh, all of those hyperlinks are clickable. They will open up the resource for you, so you don't have to type anything. So we really hope that this, you know, we were long overdue to just do like a genealogy 101 kind of a thing, just bring it all right back to the basics. So I really hope you guys found this really helpful. Um, and Donnie, do you want to introduce next week?
Yeah, next week's show is going to be really awesome because we're bringing LaBrenda back to the show, and LaBrenda is going to take care of the DNA. So I'm going to tell y'all right now, I got questions. I got lots and lots of questions, and I want you guys to come with your questions, because I know I was speaking with one of my cousins, Yolanda, and we're just, Brian and I, we have so many different lines. And y'all, if you guys could really understand my conundrum of family, it's unfreaking believable. My grandfather's great grandmother and my grandmother's grandmother are sisters. So why do I not have more DNA of a certain line? Why don't I have more? I need that question answered. That's one of the one of my biggest issues. Like, I feel like I should have more, because I have Moses Williams 4 different times in one person. I should have more Williams DNA, or should I have more Williams DNA, or what is it? It's crazy. So yeah, I got questions. I hope she's ready, because I don't know, Brian. Maybe we need to set up a spot where they can send their questions in, because this may be a big group next week. What do you think?
Well, for everyone who's watching and everyone who listens to this on YouTube, what I will do is I will set this up as a Facebook event as I normally do. I'll try to do that early tomorrow. Start posting your questions.
That's a good one. That's a good way to do that. Yeah.
Listening to questions.
Yeah. So it is 4:50. It's sorry, it's 5 o'clock. Time is up. This was a great show. I hope is more informative, very informative show. Thank you for coming up with that idea, Brian. It was awesome. And the write-up was superb as always. Your write-ups are always very good.
It's a pleasure. I just hope people find them useful.
Yes, yes. So I'm Danya.
I'm Brian. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Yes. See you guys next week.
Bye.